2 more, and we're good to go.
I was just outside. I didn't see anyone else.
Well, there's curriculum. Good Lord. There's curriculum.
Would you like to?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Something else. Would you like to public comments? Do public comments tonight?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with that? 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Please. You have 3 minutes.
I am happy to do that.
Okay, so I'm going to have you do that.
And then on a 1 minute, 30-second one.
I usually do a 30-second. I put my
30
hand
second
up.
one. I'll put my
After
hand
30
up.
You have 30 seconds.
Is it just mine?
Hey, Frank, you
what?
could have parked in Steven's spot, too.
No, I don't know.
I have
don't feel
loyalty.
that way.
Loyalty things that I've got to
Voices
maintain.
of presence.
It's a little loud, but it seems fine. All good. All right, so we need 2 more. We can start the show.
But yes, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, Shirley is here.
2 more coming.
Okay,
From the curriculum committee.
got it. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Good to see it. iPad always does different things. Oh, there it is.
This is interesting. We have you all up here tonight.
I'm sorry?
That's the Taste of Education event. Let's see.
It's on the 26th.
Next Thursday,
Wow.
Next Thursday?
26th.
Did you want to
I bought my ticket.
speak?
It's a good time.
Oh, I know, I'm sure. I've gone before, but I didn't go last year.
Oh. One mile straight. It is down to Woodward. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I don't know. Yes, I don't know.
Good evening, everyone. If everybody could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Board of Education meeting tonight, Tuesday, October 17th, 2017. Mr. Lyons is away on a business trip and won't be here this evening, and Mr. Barbas is out of the country, so I will be chairing this evening. First item on our agenda is Spotlight. We're proud to announce Carver Foundation of Norwalk will be spotlighted this evening. The Norwalk Board of Ed is pleased to recognize the Carver Foundation of Norwalk. Carver is the largest provider of after-school programs for middle and high school students in Norwalk, and a primary partner of Norwalk Public Schools. Carver's College Prep After-School Youth Development Program is conducted at the Carver Community Center, Norwalk's 4 middle and 2 comprehensive high schools, and its side-by-side charter school. Carver also operates summer and community programs, including basketball leagues, annual college tours, as well as traditional events. During the 2016 through 2017 academic year, Carver served over 835 students. Throughout the year, Carver works collaboratively with each Norwalk Public school principal to staff each school site program with certified teachers as well as non-certified teachers from each respective school. Community partners like CT Pre-Engineering Program, First Lego League, Robotics, and the Maritime Aquarium bring project-based STEM activities to our students. 2 late buses transport students to their neighboring bus stop each day after the program ends. In addition to successful after-school programs, the foundation served 721 students last summer. Affordable summer learning programs for 5 to 13-year-old students are available at the Carver Community Center as well as Columbus Magnet School. Freshman Summer Success Academics for grade 8 students transitioning into grade 9, and a summer learning experience for grade 5 students transitioning into West Rocks as well as Nathan Hale Middle School are also offered free of charge to families. Additionally, the foundation provides transportation to and from school during the summer programs, giving all students the opportunity to gain familiarity with their bus stops. Students entering middle school and high school are given the opportunity to connect with future teachers, preparing them to arrive to school ready and able to learn. Since 2005, 100% of Carver seniors have graduated high school, a majority who are first-generation college students. 83% of Carver students have graduated from a 2 or 4-year college. Carver continues to support its students during college with mentoring as well as scholarships. Carver's annual operating budget is currently $3.6 million, with diverse funding from federal, state, municipal, corporate, public, and private foundations, as well as individuals. The Carver Foundation continues to strengthen its many offerings to Norwalk students and hopes to expand its summer transition program well into 2018. All of us here tonight on the Board of Ed are proud to honor Executive Director Novalette Peterkin and everyone at Carver, and I want to mention all the people that are responsible for this amazing program. We have Diana Napier, Carver Board President, Brian Allert, Carver Deputy Director, Jacqueline Robertson, Carver Social and also Norwalk High School Social Worker, Jim Schaefer, Carver Director of Development, Joe Giandirco, Coordinator for the After-School Program at POTUS, Jose Perez, Coordinator for the After-School Program at Roten, as well as Kyle Hesip, Coordinator for the After-School Program at Norwalk High School. We have certificates for everyone, so when I call up your name, if you can come up and meet the board, we're really proud of all the work that you do for Norwalk Public Schools and its students. First person I'd like to call up is Brian Allert. If you can come on up.
All done.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations.
Jacqueline Robertson. Great. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Jackie.
Thank you. Hey.
Good to see you.
Jim Schaefer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
And Joe Giandirco.
Job, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Good job. Good job.
Jose Perez. We'll hold on to a certificate for him. Kylie Heaslip.
Congratulations. Can we meet? Good job.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And Diana Napier.
Congratulations. Oh my goodness.
Can I give you this to also get to Jose? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Diane. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you again to the Carver Center for everybody coming. I'm sorry? Oh, Novelette, did I forget Novelette? Novelette, I'm sorry. Novelette, come on up. I'm sorry, we have your certificate. I'm not sure where that was the reason. Thank you for everything. Brenda, can we get a certificate? Thank you again. And Novelette, we'll make sure we get your certificate to you. All right.
Do it in bronze.
In bronze. Maybe gold, maybe a little silver. Next item on our agenda is our public comments. Mr. Anderson, do you have the sheet?
I do, Ms. Keith. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're going to move into the public comments portion of the meeting. I'm going to call up a name. When you get to the microphone, if you can please state your name and address for the record. And we will start with John Mosby.
Good afternoon, board. My name is John Mose. I live at 15 Addison Avenue. I'm going to be very brief here tonight. I want to say to the board, I was a little stung when I learned from a lot of my members that the Board of Education had put them under the state. They were disappointed. They didn't notify us, and they didn't say nothing to us. We didn't see no contract. And tonight I seen the governor on there, and I hope I'm quoting him right. He told them all there, he said, if you retired, invested under municipal department, we cannot make y'all come under that plan. He says, a violation of this state and federal law. I know it's a violation of the state and federal law because all of us retired are under Medicare. So we over 65. The government is over us. We paying our own due. We vested in the city. And I want to say fair, I'm not playing no politics. I didn't come here to play politics. Everybody know me. I'm a straight shooter. I wrote to the pension board. I wrote to the union. I gave 3 or 4 letters to the board. I said, I want to meet with y'all. Then none of them, they ignored us. Now we got 31 men, and we got a court date coming up, and everybody told, oh, you there. But no, we got a court date coming up, I think it's December 6th. We're going to go before the judges. And I know the board is going to bring out laws, but this is going to be a fight. Our argument is that we are vested and you violate the law. Now let me say one more thing to you all. Once you retire, the union ain't got nothing to do. The union ain't got, I told them, they ain't got nothing to do with us. The judge ruled down in the court. He said, no, say them guys we have to go out there and get our money our own self. See, the union don't represent us no more. So we had to go out and scrape up money. And you know it's hard to get a lawyer when they want $20,000. But unfortunately, we was able to get into court. So we will be in the court. And I think we got 21 men. 21 men going to be coming in there. We're going to definitely stand up for our rights. And I don't think it's right for what you bold them do. You don't want to even just say, no one at the board sit down and talk to her. I don't think the superintendent spoke to me since he's been here. I don't think his staff met me. Other day I went and the woman was so mean to me. She slammed the door in my face. That's how rude they are. But that's all right. That man up above going to take care of everything. That's why you see in this country all the stuff going on. You have all the money
30
roll.
seconds.
Yes, sir. Just 1 minute. I'm the only one. I'm going to sit down. You just don't bother me. Just 1 minute. I'm only one. Up in heaven, God is looking down. You can have all the money you want. But that man up above is moving on this country. He don't like what's going on. Thank God to them 2 guys that saved that Medicare. And ain't nothing wrong with that Medicare. You don't know what's going on. I'm going to say this to them, I'm going to sit down. You all don't know. I met with a woman the other day, she was crying. She took the insurance for her little child in the wheelchair and then set a bill for $942 a month.
3 minutes.
And thank you very much. And I just want to let you know, Mr. We elected you to the board, you to start to represent us. Thank you, sir.
And that will end our public comment session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Costanzo.
Thank you, Heidi. Good evening, board, mayor. So as many of you know, our superintendent is away tonight in New Orleans. He's attending the American Association of School Administrators Breakfast Grant Program. You may know that Norwalk was one of 12 districts nationally to receive a grant in the amount of $52,000 as a jumpstart to our breakfast program next year. We were the only district in Connecticut to receive this grant of $52,000, and in order to receive and actually accept the $52,000, the superintendent needed to go to New Orleans in person to receive the award. So we're very proud of the Norwalk Public Schools, and I will be filling in for the superintendent tonight. The first item on tonight's report involves the Connecticut System for Educator Evaluation and Development, more commonly referred to as the Connecticut SEED Evaluation Program. There are 2 pieces to this. Ralph, if you could get the PowerPoint up, I'm not going to be able to get up to the podium.
Click the side clicker on the clicker.
Oh, I didn't see that there. Thank you. Great. So as most of you know, per state statute, all educators in the state of Connecticut need to be evaluated on an annual basis. This includes superintendents, their senior managers, administrators at the school level, on down to teachers and other certified staff. The reason for this is that there is a strong body of evidence that suggests that the greatest predictor of student improvement and achievement is owed to the classroom teacher. So what happens in classrooms between the teacher, the student, around content referred to as the instructional core, is the highest leverage that we have in changing student learning outcomes. A close second are principal leadership. I know we're having some issues with but we do have the one working here for those of you that are in the audience. A distant second is the effectiveness of the building level leader. Principal evaluation and administrator evaluation, also very important in student achievement and outcomes. If you look at the second bullet, you'll see that the purpose of the Connecticut SEED model, which was adopted, I'll talk in a few moments, was adopted in 2012, was done so as a way to accurately measure student achievement in the context of teacher evaluation. And this is a departure from what took place in Connecticut prior to 2012. The SEED model intends for the process to be fair, accurate, driven by data, and one that is collaborative, where building administrators and classroom teachers work together to solve complex education problems. I wanted to highlight for you that the evaluation is not, a disconnected component to the work that we do as a district. In fact, when the superintendent and the senior management team set out to develop the strategic operating plan back in 2015, 2016, at the core of that was Goal 4, which was to develop exemplary teachers and school leaders. And that is really at the foundation of the work that happens in the SEED process. This is more than an instrument or a mechanism to evaluate or rate administrators and teachers. The process is intended to be one in which the teacher is learning and growing and setting ambitious but reasonable goals around student learning growth. You can see we also talk about implementing a performance management system that collects and analyzes data as it relates to student achievement. That work is happening through the talent office under the leadership of Sharice Sherry. So before we get into some of the details of evaluation in the Norwalk Public Schools, I thought it would be valuable to audience members and to board members to get a brief history on evaluation in the state of Connecticut, just over the past several years in this decade. In 2012, the Connecticut State Board of Education, in consultation with the Performance Evaluation Advisory, adopted a series of guidelines for teacher and administrator evaluation and support. And in 13-14, that was the first year that the SEED program was actually launched in Connecticut. Ironically and interestingly, this was really the first time that Connecticut provided that student learning would be a factor considered in the evaluation of teacher performance. Now that is a significant shift in the philosophy of educators in Connecticut, and it had the support of both union leaders as well as state leaders and district management. The time had come in Connecticut to consider student learning and achievement results as a factor in the ratings that teachers and administrators get on an annual basis. I believe that that's really a watershed moment in the history of evaluation in Connecticut. And then over the 2017-2018 school year, as a result of changes at the State House, standardized assessments can no longer be used for administrator or teacher evaluation purposes. What does that mean? Essentially, the SAT as a test cannot be used as an evaluation instrument when we are looking at teacher evaluation. At the 3 through 8 level, SBAC similarly cannot be used as an assessment. This is also a departure from previous evaluation systems and processes. And the Norwalk Public Schools realizes that this is the law. We think there are pros and cons to not having the standardized assessments be a portion of any one educator's evaluation outcome. But we do have some great internal assessments that have been brought on by the current senior management team and the curriculum office that we believe are good quality assessment tools that can be utilized to evaluate teacher effectiveness. So I want to talk a little bit about the teacher evaluation rating and how this is arrived. The state, working with the advisory council, was careful and deliberate about having a nuanced set of instruments to measure teacher quality across the state. They realized that it was important to not place all of the eggs in one basket, but to really have a diverse portfolio from which to look, gather information, and make determinations about the quality of a teacher's work in a classroom with a group of students. You can see here that 40% of a teacher's evaluation in Norwalk and across the state, as per state statute, is to be based upon observations of instruction. These are administrator observations of classroom practice, where the teacher is conducting a classroom, utilizing a lesson plan that's been prepped, and there are students interacting with content with the teacher and developing skills and mastering content. 45% is based upon the students' learning outcomes. That's what we talked about just a moment ago, and that really is significant. Each teacher in the state of Connecticut, each teacher in Norwalk, places 45% of their overall evaluation on how their students do in the time that they have them over the course of their school year. So over a 10-month period, our baseline and what we look for from each teacher is to grow their kids by at least 1 year's worth, according to what research indicates is 1 year's worth. 10% is based upon parent feedback, and that can be from goals focused on annual parent surveys. And then there's a 5% component to the teacher evaluation rating that is a whole school learning indicator and connected with the administrator's goal, which we're going to look at in just a moment. This is basically the same information, but a different visual representation, so you could get a sense of how these items are weighted. Student growth, obviously, is the most significant and most heavily weighted component to the teacher evaluation rating, followed closely by observations of practice. The administrator evaluation is very similar to that of our teachers. 40% based upon observations of performance, and as you know, I evaluate the principals in the Norwalk Public Schools. And so those evaluations, excuse me, look a little bit different than they do for teachers, in that my observations are looking at broader scale issues that principals are facing and working through on a regular basis. Observation example might include me observing a principal lead a faculty through a faculty meeting, or a data team meeting with a grade level of teachers or content area group of teachers. It really can run the gamut. And it's done collaboratively with pre and post conferences for those opportunities. You could see, again, 10% and 5%, 10% with stakeholder feedback, a 5% weighting for whole school measures of student performance. So prior to 2012, the system, like most other states, had a fairly antiquated way of evaluating educators in Connecticut. You were either satisfactory or you were unsatisfactory. And I don't know that other professions look at it that way, but I would certainly prefer that educators have a little bit more detail behind their rating besides just satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And this is one of the significant shifts that came out of this change in 2012. A 4-level matrix, you can see it here, 4 indicating exemplary, or in common language, the administrator or the teacher has exceeded the goals that were set out at the beginning of the evaluation process. A 3 is considered proficient or effective, meaning that the goals that were set at the beginning of the process were met. A 2 is a developing rating, and developing means that progress was made, but that the goal was not hit. And then we have needs improvement or not met standard, and that is when in cases where a goal is falling short of the expectation that was set out at the beginning, and there has been no improvement over the interval of time that the teacher has had the children in his or her classroom. Now, this can get really complicated, and I wanted to make sure that you had a fairly broad view of what happens in the evaluation process and what this has looked like for Norwalk Public Schools since the 2015-2016 school year. But I did think it would be important for board members and the public to be aware of what a SLO is. We hear about these all the time. In education, acronyms are really all over the place. A SLO is a student learning objective, and that is really the core of the student learning growth measure that is set between the teacher and the administrator. It's the teacher's impact on student learning within the set time that the teacher is working with the group of students. Just incidentally, over the past couple of weeks, I've pulled together a small group of principals who have been working together on a really innovative seminar that we're going to be doing with all principals later this week, where we are going to be holding goal-setting conferences, but they're going to be called fishbowl goal-setting conferences. And we have 2 principals, 1 elementary, 1 middle school, basically simulating a conversation between a principal and a teacher on the establishment of SLOs. And we're doing that at the elementary level and the middle school level on Thursday, which should be exciting and interesting for the principals who will be joining us on Thursday at central office. You can see here that SLOs are developed and aligned to support the school improvement plan. School improvement plans obviously are set and developed to support the larger strategic operating plan that any district should have. SLOs are important because they reinforce best practices. They focus on student learning, which is the most important thing that we do in our business. There is the potential for collaboration among administrators, among teachers, and between administrators and teachers. And lastly, and importantly, SLOs can be adapted. In other words, we have a beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. We've talked a lot about that when Michael Connor was working on the rollout of the NWEA map system, the BOY, the MOY, and the EOY. Those SLOs that are set at the beginning of the year can be adapted or changed during MOY season when we have mid-year data that becomes available to us. That might show us a pattern or trend that is surprising, that is something that we're seeing across the system. And in those cases, we can make adjustments to the original SLOs that are set at the beginning of the year if we believe we were way off our targets for where we expected student learning growth to be at the middle of the year. So the student learning objective process looks pretty much like this. It's boiled down to a review of data, which happens over the beginning of the year. At this point in our school year, all of our students in grades 3 through 8 have taken the NWEA BOY map assessment, and that gives teachers with new students in their classrooms an initial set of data for where students are in September and October of the school year. And based upon that BOY, they set goals for student learning, working with the principals and CISDs at their schools. Phase 3 is the implementation of the goals and a monitoring of the student progress. What is great and unique about the NWEA system is that at any given time, a teacher or an administrator could go into the system online and pull reports that show where students are relative to peers in their classroom, relative to national norm standards, and in relation to where they should be in their own annual growth projection for the year. I happened to be at Roten Middle School at the beginning of the week, and I saw a house leader and the assistant principal facilitate a faculty meeting where they showed the teachers how to go into the NWEA system and pull reports that provided them with detailed information about where kids were in terms of the assessment, and even more perfectly could pinpoint down to a skill individual students in areas where they really needed to focus their next level of work on. So if the topic happened to be writing, they could go beyond just the score of the student and drill down to this student can effectively create a thesis statement, but is only developing in the ability to create transition sentences from paragraph to paragraph. That level of detail and specificity is really necessary in our current education climate where teachers are asked to differentiate instruction. And then lastly, the SLOW Phase 4 is to assess student outcomes relative to goals. So at the end of the year, closer to spring, students take the MAP assessment for the third and final time, and that data is then compared against the middle of the year data and the beginning of the year data, and the SLOWs are quantified. SLOWs are met, not met, partially met, and all of this information factors into the teacher's evaluation. So it's important that we also talk about administrator and teacher evaluation, those performance ratings, the 4, 3, 2, 1, and what that distribution looks like across our system of 20 schools. So I've provided some pie charts. I'll take you through these. Please let me know if you have questions. We have approximately 60 administrators in the district. This first pie chart are the administrators that fell under the supervision of the Office of Operations. Most of those are done by me. There are a handful done by the Director of School Improvement, Patty Foley. And you can see here that for the administrators that Operations was supervising and evaluating for, about 64% of the administrators, principals primarily, were rated a proficient or effective level. 14% were exemplary, 18% were developing, and 4% were needs improvement. At the time that Dr. Adamowski brought his team on in the 14-15 year, it should be noted that all principals in the district were rated exemplary when we came on board in 15-16. So this is quite an improvement and better reflects a distribution of proficiency levels among administrators. When we look at all other Norwalk administrators, this includes assistant principals at the high school, the middle school, CISDs, administrators in central office. The distribution looks fairly similar. The exemplary rating is a bit higher, 28%. Proficiency very similar at 66%. We didn't have a needs improvement percentage, 6% at the developing rating for the administrators in this pie chart. I believe 57 in total.
Frank, how many were in the last category?
In that second pie chart?
In the first, you said 57 for the all others.
In the first pie chart, 22.
22.
So if you look at the NPS teacher evaluation rating distribution in 16-17, which is the third pie chart, I would argue that you see a fairly common distribution here. We have 56% of our teachers scoring at the proficient or effective level, just under 40% at the exemplary, 4% at developing, 0 at below standard, and 1% at incomplete. Now this is a population of approximately 870 or 80 individuals. If you take a look at the next pie chart, I was unable to find state data on the 16-17 school year, but I did find 13-14. I thought it would be helpful for you all to see a comparison between the district's performance rating distribution and the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut has approximately 39,000 teachers that are evaluated using the Connecticut SEED system. And you can see here what it looks like. 98% of teachers in the state of Connecticut in 13-14 were rated exemplary or proficient, 2% at developing or below standard. So I think, the Commissioner of Education on down would concede that educators have some work to do in creating an evaluation system that reflects the quality of performance relative to classroom practitioners.
For the next time you present the seed data to us, to make it easier for us to interpret, can you provide us a breakdown of the percentages by the certain variables such as years of experience, certification type, and then qualitatively tell us whether or not years of experience, certification type, et cetera, had any type of relationship with the context in which they were in? I'll give you an outlier example. For example, if someone's very strong in mathematics, but they're not in a STEAM school, what does that look like? Should we actually be moving individuals from a certain context to another context to better utilize their strengths and then, in turn, help improve any areas of weaknesses?
I think that's something that we can generate through our own talent office. We looked at the raw data and looked at a pretty superficial level this time around in terms of performance ratings, but we could certainly look at levels of experience. I don't know whether the state of Connecticut breaks that information down for us, but I'm certainly willing to take a look for you.
Okay, thank you.
I would point out that I agree with it in principle, but that might maintain some confidentiality for a sample size of 800 or 900, but if you're talking about 20 people, I don't think you can break that out without.
It could be anonymous.
Well,
We'd have to look to see what best practice looks like for breaking out that level of detail when we're talking about a small sample size. I think you're looking specifically at teacher ratings in your
Teachers and administrators.
Okay. So the administrators, as you know, the district has about approximately 60. What we probably could do is create one pie chart that includes administrator evaluation for all administrators as opposed to just broken out by which central office department was doing the evaluation. That might provide a little bit more cover to those that, would not want to be,
Yeah, this
visible.
wouldn't be identifying markers. There'll be variables of a unit of analysis. So if you want to know whether or not, it'll just be, for example, columns with numbers. It wouldn't be in percentages. Right now we have amalgamated percentages. So when we look at amalgamated outcome, we can't tell whether or not the preponderance of the percentage is really based on experienced teachers and administrators pulling it up, or is it because we have a lot more teachers and administrators who are experience doesn't equate proficiency, but technically you would think that if we have newer teachers and newer administrators, our scores will be skewed more this way, but we don't know that because we can't interpret the data.
Good point.
I don't disagree. I just think in a population size of 20 or less, that's not a statistically significant measure by the definition, and that it would actually infringe on privacy. So it needs to be held confidential.
Eric, do you have a question?
I'm not looking for statistical significance. I'm looking for just a way of looking at the district as a whole, so we have an idea of what our context is like.
Thank you, Ms. Keyes. I also agree. I was looking at these and wanted some more information, but I unfortunately have the same concern that Mr. Meek has. When I look at the sample size specifically with the administrators, there is 4% that are below that are in that needs improvement category. That's one, that one rating, and that could be one or two administrators from just the rough calculation I looked at. I would love to know personally, but I think that might be something that if it was to be discussed at all, would have to be discussed in executive session because of privacy. I personally don't think that we are, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Costanzo, that we can share that type of information that could even lead folks to assume what it is.
That's accurate. We cannot.
And also and I think that that's also a measure of what you, Dr. Adamowski, and others in central office do in your jobs. I think that it's important for us to understand any correlations that you would see in data that you could present, but I think also for my own comfort levels to protect the anonymity of our professionals as we're evaluating them and helping them improve in cases where they might be needs improvement or developing, that if it was something that we could dig into a little bit more of the details to get some more information from you, that seems to me more of an executive session.
I think it's a good first step for the district. When we think about how far we've come over the past 2+ years, to get to a point where we could have a public discussion about our educator evaluation ratings means that we are working toward something that will be better for students ultimately. And there can be and there should be more improvement to our processes for providing this. But as an initial first-time review of educator performance, this is an important milestone for the district to be able to have this discussion publicly. There are a couple of takeaways that I could share with you in terms of what the data tells us. First, while all of our administrators have been Connecticut SEED trained, calibration training for administrators is clearly our next level of work as a district. Calibration essentially meaning that our administrators are going through a similar training process where they're able to review teaching and learning and make decisions about how to rate teachers' performance, looking at similar things, similar rubrics, trying to narrow the differences that we see oftentimes based upon how one adult might interpret the quality of a lesson plan versus another. Over the summer, I developed a plan and proposed it to the superintendent, which would have provided basically an 18-month to 2-year robust administrator calibration training through revision learning. But because of the state budget issues, that MOU was placed on hold. So the calibration training with administrators that was set to begin for this school year has not happened. In place of that, Sharice Sherry and I have been working to develop a basic 1 or 2 session opportunity that CES would provide us over the course of this year. They would meet with all principals during a 4 or 5 hour session this year, and then all assistant principals and CISDs that would at least provide some basic calibration training so that we could begin the process. The other thing that the district is doing relative to calibration training is coming out of the curriculum office just in the last couple of weeks. I know curriculum was located at Nathan Hale Middle School. The middle school principals were involved in what's called an instructional rounds process. That's where building principals meet at one school and talk about a problem of practice that is existing at that one school. And then they go into the building, which is really incredible because you have to be able to depersonalize what's happening as a principal, the good and the bad. And they walk through the buildings together and they talk about what they're seeing and what they're not seeing. And what is guiding that work is a framework that's offered by a consultant group to help calibrate what quality looks like in the classroom. So despite the budget issues this year, we're doing everything we can, knowing that the next level of work is to get administrators to see more of the same, or at least be working from that similar perspective.
You're talking about each school, like going into each school?
That's correct.
Having sharing best practices and seeing what's one school's doing the same as another school?
That's right.
Okay.
And really the principle of it is that the administrator that hosts the event, all administrators understand that principal hosting is depersonalizing the practice that's happening in classrooms. And the observers, who are the principals, are going in and they are observing using descriptive language and feedback. So all of the feedback concerning the instructional core is descriptive. There are no examples of, well, as they get better at this, there won't be examples of observers writing things like, the instruction is good, or this is excellent. It'll be based in actual evidence that they're seeing in the classroom. Like, there are 19 kids in the classroom, and 2 students have their heads down as the teacher is modeling the FOIL method in math. So it offers a great opportunity for administrators to get better at this important part of their job. The second takeaway here is that a correlation really should exist between educator performance ratings and student learning outcomes, and this is not always the case. We do have some schools who are performing lower than others in Norwalk, where we're satisfied that the administrators in the building have taken that into consideration when coming up with teacher evaluations, and we're seeing the evaluations more in line with schools that are not meeting their learning growth targets. And that's unfortunately uncomfortable for folks that are not used to constructive criticism and lower performance ratings when we are not hitting targets. But I think it's necessary if we're going to be realistic about setting ratings that are actually authentic and aligned to what students are doing or not doing in schools. And then lastly, I think this point I underscored, which is that the NPS teacher evaluation rating distribution is not unlike what we're seeing across the state. It clearly needs to improve both here in Norwalk and across Connecticut. The teacher evaluation process and timeline, this is a visual that's pulled right from the Connecticut State Department of Education. All of our teachers received a PowerPoint presentation at the beginning of this week in their faculty meetings, delivered by an administrator in the building concerning the launch of the evaluation year in Norwalk. This is pretty straightforward. Orientation on the process, that's new teachers or teachers that are unfamiliar with the Connecticut SEED model to become acquainted with the process. And then goal setting, planning, and developing. All goals need to be set, teachers, administrators, by November 15th of each school year. At the mid-year, there's a review of goals and performance. There's a mid-year formative review. That's the opportunity where SLOs can be modified or adapted based upon the patterns and trends that we're seeing in the data. And then at the end of the school year, self-assessments, which are done by teachers and administrators. They come to their end-of-year goal-setting conference having reflected on their own practices and student performance, and hitting or not hitting those SLOs. And all based upon the plan that we've developed as a PDEC committee, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. We're now setting that all of those end-of-year conferences and final ratings need to be done by June 30th of the school year. It's more possible to do that now because standardized assessments are no longer an assessment that we can use in evaluation purposes. When we could use SAT or we could use SBAC, those assessments provided by the state or the College Board didn't come back to us until later in the summer. So we would have to keep evaluations open until that data could come in, we could analyze it, and then close out conferences, which sometimes didn't happen until teachers returned from summer vacation. This next slide just provides you with the domains that that administrators and teachers are looking at when they're coming up with teacher evaluation. It's the Connecticut Common Core of Teaching rubric. It's utilized across the state of Connecticut. There are 4 domains, pretty straightforward. Our administrators are looking at classroom environment, student engagement, commitment to learning. They're looking at planning for active learning, instruction for active learning, and professional responsibilities and teacher leadership. Each of these are equally important. We want to see high quality interactions happening between student, teacher, content, student, and student. We also want to see that there's a good deal of high quality planning going into those classroom lessons and instruction. I won't get into the details of the next slide other than they're here for you if you want to look a little further at what domain 1 actually looks like on the rubric, the same for 2, 3, and 4. And I'll close by talking a little bit about our own Professional Development and Evaluation Committee, PDEC. So the state of Connecticut requires that every district by statute have a PDEC committee that is in place and operating. In the 2014-2015 school year, to my knowledge and the superintendent's knowledge, there was no PDEC committee meeting on a regular basis to look at evaluation. Shortly after the superintendent's arrival He appointed several administrators and teachers to the PDEC committee. He asked that Mary Jordan co-chair the PDEC committee in 15-16 with Bob Deluski. And with Bob Deluski setting off into the retirement years, I have taken over Bob Deluski's place as the co-chair on the PDEC committee, working with Mary. The PDEC has a very important role in determining and submitting Norwalk's annual SEED implementation plan. We did that over the spring. We have an edited version back from the Connecticut State Department of Education. Our teaching plan, our Norwalk teaching plan right now, will go back to the State Department for a second edit, and it will be finalized. In the meantime, it's a draft plan that we have in place that is available to teachers and administrators across the district. The other piece to the PDEC's work, which I think most of us on the PDEC committee would acknowledge is probably our next level of work, is working together on aligning staff PD and ensuring that the plans that we develop are aligned with the strategic operating plan. But in the PDEC's first couple of years of operation, so to speak, we've had to really just work on the basics, which is getting a teacher plan in place, an administrator plan in place, sending those off to the Connecticut State Department of Education for review, getting those back, and then putting those in place. But as a PDEC committee, we need to do a better job at thinking about the professional development opportunities that we are making available to teachers and administrators in the district so that they're learning and growing. Final comment on this really is that, you know, at the end of the day, in terms of evaluation in Norwalk, our goal is to get students to be learning and growing. And ideally, we're able to do that in an environment where the professionals who are charged with that work are held accountable, but feeling supported and a part of the process of both the evaluation and the decisions that we're making about student learning in classrooms. You know, for many of us, it's very new, it's different, and you know, we're well pleased with the work that we've done up until this point in this 17-18 school year.
I want to thank you for a very comprehensive report.
Sure.
Long-term coming, but I'm glad that we actually have it on the table and can talk about it
Thank you.
tonight. It's definitely needed some work along the way, but a lot of good information. Thank you. Mr. Kusinis.
Okay, quick question on the SLO. Is the central office going to help set those? Or?
Yeah, that's a good question. The SLOs are determined after a review of student achievement data. It's very difficult for individuals to come up with these without some guidance. So
individuals being the teachers?
The teachers or the administrators. Okay. So we have a group in central office that have been looking. Diane Filardo has really primarily done the work on this, and she has come up with some guiding principles to help administrators and teachers set the student learning objectives. I didn't get into the nuances of this, but there are IAGDs, which it would take me a couple of minutes to remember the acronym, but they are measures that fall under student learning objectives, believe it or not. And then they're discerned by both the teacher and the administrator as effective measures to measure student learning. So it's a careful balancing act. You know, on the one hand, we don't want to walk into goal-setting conferences and tell people what they are to do. On the other hand, we can't have, you know, a wild, wild west situation where everybody has free reign over what student learning objectives look like. So we're fairly deliberate. We've got a very clear structure in place which provides the framework for teachers and administrators to say, okay, so we're looking at this set of students. We know we need to address these core learners, and we have to do it under the umbrella of these assessments. One should be standardized. Both could be standardized, but one has to be standardized. A second SLO can be set that is non-standardized. And the ultimate goal is that the teacher and administrator both believe in the SLOs at the end of the process.
Thank you, Dr. Stanzo. A couple quick questions. First, on the last page with the PDEC, we've talked, you and Dr. Connor had talked about the Leadership Academy before. Is there any collaboration or correlation to the PDEC with that?
Up until this point, the PDEC has not been focused much on professional development.
Okay.
At our first PDEC meeting, which happened just a few days ago, Mary explained that that is one piece of work that is important, which I agree with. We've got to look, in addition to establishing plans for how to set SLOs, do observations, et cetera, we also need to start to look as a committee in terms of how we are informing the curriculum office and the superintendent about possible ways to build professional capacity in the teachers and the administrators in the district. In fact, in preparation for this presentation, I went back into my files and I took a look at a letter that the superintendent sent to me back in 2015, and he outlined what a PDEC is supposed to do, and that was one of the pieces, which was, kind of once you get your feet established with getting the groundwork done, a highly effective PDEC committee is actually helping to inform professional development as district-wide.
And I'm glad to hear that because, when I started on the board 2 years ago now, that was something that was being discussed a lot. So I would like to see, I hope that there's going to be some movement with this soon, especially for our teachers in the large community there. Now, another quick question I had, I saw as a part of the evaluation process, there is the self-assessment. So I'm assuming that that is the administrators and the teachers giving their own assessment of their own duties, correct?
That's correct.
Do you have any data on what the correlation is between what teachers and administrators evaluated themselves at versus what they received? I'd just be curious because I think that that might speak to a self-perception versus what is actually going on and being measured on, to be both sensitive and help develop those that may have missed the mark.
I have not looked at that. I would wonder if the MLP program that is managed out of the talent office has the capacity to create that type of report. I would think that research exists out of universities that would show whether there's a correlation between teacher and administrator self-perception of their own performance versus what the reality looks like. Charisse, I don't know if you know whether that's possible in our current MLP format.
I'd appreciate that very much. Thank you. The last one is super quick, hopefully. This graph, the one that was the 2013-14 Connecticut teacher evaluation, where it was the 98% exemplary and the 2% developing below. Was this with the seed model?
This was with the seed model in 13-14. Now, in 13-14, I believe it was a pilot seed year, so it may not have been all districts in Connecticut. This is a good question. This may have reflected a combination of new seed districts that were piloting seed and many other districts that were still working in the former system. I can take a look at the Department of Education to see if they have any more recent data on teacher ratings with seed fully implemented in all districts.
The only reason I'm curious on that is our little anomaly that happened with all administrators getting 4s. It kind of seems that seems to be more of a fit to the way this rating occurred, so just curious.
But that's 3s and 4s in that pie chart. That's 3s and 4s in that pie chart.
Oh.
That equals, yeah.
That's right.
It's not 98% 4s. Good. It still doesn't show nearly enough 2s, though.
Correct. I agree with that. Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. If there's a way to get that broken down, I'd be curious to see it. Just
sure.
Thank you.
Another question. One of the major factors of a student's performance is their home life. So you can have a great teacher, but have a horrible home life. The student's not going to perform to the best of their abilities. How do you factor that in to a teacher's rating?
One of the things that is a real credit to the evaluation system is that we're not looking at absolute scores alone. We're looking at what a teacher can do with a group of learners from the time they get them, regardless of where they may come in. And, having served in urban district, I can tell you that it can be extremely challenging to work with students who are not having enough to eat at home or have enough to be clothed, and the violence that can sometimes be around them can have serious implications.
Or going home to an empty home.
But what
Parents are working.
True, but what we do as a district is we talk about wraparound services and how, as a district, we can help to offset some of those liabilities that our students have. And two, we just reemphasize how very important it is in the precious amount of time that teachers have learners with them during a school day. We have learners that come in who have traumatic experiences and they go home to traumatic experiences. What we are able to do with them during the school day is really remarkable. And the data that we saw last year, when we saw the achievement gap close by a third, primarily with our lowest level learners, indicates that the students that are growing the most are the students that have some of these serious emotional issues. So as a district, we're doing it well. We may not always state enough or give credit enough to teachers for the work that they're doing with students who are coming with these situations and environments and experiences, but it's clear from the data over the past year that these same students that we're talking about are the students that grew at a clip that we were very surprised at. There's always the social emotional component to learning that sometimes gets lost in an accountability era like this. We just have to remember to not drop the ball in either area.
A follow-up question to Mr. Kasimis. In cases where that is going on, is there something built in to a teacher's day where they can reach out to get support for those children? I mean, I understand that it can be difficult to measure that, and it could impact the overall performance. However, if a teacher is seeing that, I would certainly hope that there is some sort of assistance that the teacher could get for said student, because to me, I just don't want it to sound like, okay, I have this student who's struggling with home issues. There's nothing I can do about that. Is there? I don't know, I'm asking the question. So I don't want to believe that that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, in a quality school culture, you would expect that a principal and a teacher can find common ground on what constitutes a student that needs resources that are above and beyond what a typical student might need. And that's where our itinerant staff come in, counselors, social workers, before and after school programs, community connections that could be helpful. It's important that the teacher and the administrator are on the same page in terms of what their combined expectations are for that particular student's outcome. It's also important that they both have a similar vision for what that student's day ought to look like. If a student is coming into a classroom each day, coming off of a traumatic experience, it would not make sense for that student to have the identical agenda for the day that his classmate has, who's coming with a much different set of experiences. We would hope that there would be pieces built into that child's day that gets at some of those social emotional issues that you're not going to get in a math block alone without some modifications to the program.
I'm sure also, just to piggyback on that, Frank, our teachers are amazing, so I'm sure that they're picking up on this and things that might be happening in that child's home and reaching out to principal, assistant principal, social worker, school psychologists. I mean, like you said, a whole school community kind of reaching out and trying to help.
Right, and so that to that point, and when it was kind of the follow-up question to what Mr. Kasimis was saying, I would hope that in evaluations, that if there are those students, that is being taken into consideration then. You know, if you have a child that's having a traumatic home experience, the number of things that Mr. Kasimis mentioned, a number of other factors, the student may be struggling with sexuality. You know, it's just one other additional piece of it. There are so many social and emotional factors. However, you know, I would hope that A, the student is able to be given help and assistance to get through that, to continue to perform and make the most of their school day, but at the same time, the teacher would also, or administrator, depending on the categorization of the evaluation, would also have that factored in, and there would be a commonality and a knowledge and a conversation happening to understand why student A and B may not be performing to the level as the rest of the class.
Yeah, agreed. I think, you know, the bottom line on it would be we do everything we can to provide that child to reach their maximum potential, but they all learn. We get them to all learn, and we do it on an individual basis, knowing that each child is going to arrive there differently.
And I would hope that if a teacher felt that there was a reason they were being maybe penalized in the eye of the teacher for certain performance issues, that could be a discussion happening about a child who, even if you get services, there are still traumas that will continue to affect you. It's not like you can get into the social worker's office and then poof, everything's cured. But at the same time, again, it's just that conversation that I'm going to ask a direct question on this. Is that in existence? Have you and your team had that conversation where if this was brought to the forefront in a conversation from a teacher, if there was a discrepancy or a concern on their evaluation, are these conversations being had?
They should be, and any teacher evaluation process that includes a collaboration where the principal and the teacher are talking about a set group of students and what their learning looks like over the course of the year would take into consideration the different learners in the room, the experiences they bring, and what is being provided to help that student be successful, and provided by both the teacher in the classroom, the administrator, and the other resources that are available.
Would we be able to have a report on this provided to us from the administrators, just on this, or from the teachers union or whatever, just to get an idea, because this is something I think that also has come up before, and kind of building the bridges between certain areas of the school to make it more effective in helping our students achieve in all different levels. Could we get some sort of a conversation or an analysis of the...
Yeah, I think we could. I'd like to take a little more time to think about it.
No, and I'm not asking for a direct answer now. It's more for you, and then when Dr. Adamowski's back, and the entire team to work together. But I think that would be something very important, especially because of our changing dynamics and how we're dealing with school climate, and you know, the new directions we're taking in that respect, and really trying to get a better focus on that.
Do you want me to move on to the second item?
Any other discussion? Ready to move on? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next one is really just an announcement. The Norwalk Education Foundation is an excellent organization, and in the process of doing their annual fundraiser. It's going to occur on Thursday, October 26th between 6 and 8 p.m. It will happen at 401 Westport Avenue in Norwalk. And I encourage members of the board to be there present and to participate, along with members of the senior management team and audience members. It's a great benefit. The resources go to the NEF, which in turn is distributed through the district to support teachers in classrooms and schools as we work through these complex challenges. So I wanted to make sure that I put in a plug for the NEF, and hope we have a successful event.
401 Westport Avenue, is that Itoro's?
Itoro's.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure it's a known place.
I'll see you all there.
Yeah.
I hope.
Awesome. All right.
And that completes the superintendent's
Great,
report.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Hands off,
Costanzo.
very much appreciated, and thank you again for the report and for the information on NEF. Next item on our agenda is action, consent calendar. We have 6.2A, approval of personnel, 6.2B, approval of budget transfers, 6.2C, approval of trips. First one is Brian McMahon High School to Peru, Lima, Machu Picchu, Sacred Valley, February 10th through the 19th, 2018. Norwalk High School Winter Guard to Dayton, Ohio, World Championship, April 11th through the 15th, 2017. And Norwalk High School Winter Percussion to Dayton, Ohio, WGI World Championship, April 18th through the 22nd, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Second.
You have a mistake.
There's, yeah, we all noticed at the same
Okay,
time.
go ahead.
I'll let you take it.
Oh,
Date should be
2018.
2018.
Okay, thank you for
We've already
noticing
passed that date.
Okay, thank you. All right. All in favor?
I actually have one quick
Yeah,
question
sure.
on the budget transfer.
Yep.
SBB, the transfer of the Brian McMahon SBB to CGS. What is SBB? Tom, hopefully it's a quick question.
Student-based budget.
School-based budgeting.
Oh.
This was at
School-based
the
budgeting.
finance meeting.
Okay,
the
so
other
this,
day. Yeah.
that part I missed. I remember I
Yeah,
came in
sorry.
late. I apologize, Mr. Meek. Thank you so much. That's,
You good? Yeah, it basically means just simply the budget, it's the school budget for Brian McMahon High School.
yes, that I am very familiar with. So that was when we had that kind of issue with the grant going on that we needed to. Perfect, thank you so much.
All right.
Good.
All in favor? So moved. Thank you. Next item on the action item is the approval of standards adoption of K through 8 ELA and math curriculum. I'm going to get a motion on the table, and then I'm going to have Craig Kreller present it and talk a little bit further. So do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Kasimis, second. Mr. Anderson. Any discussion before I have Mr. Kreller come up? I'm sure there will be discussion once you speak. All right, Mr. Kreller, you want to come up? Thank you.
So we are always grateful to speak with you, and I don't want to bore you with another presentation we presented at the Curriculum Committee and also last week at the board meeting. But Janine Goss is also here, our ELA director, and we're happy to answer questions. We're excited to finally move in a direction where the standards and the high priority standards are the focus of the curriculum rather than the textbook. So for the first time, Norwalk is taking a giant leap forward. Mr. Meeks.
Yeah, just one question. Yeah, I've only been up here 2.5 years. How reusable is this work you're doing? Is this something like we have to reinvent every 3 to 4 years, or is this a framework we can move forward on?
It's definitely a framework we can move forward with, and in fact, we update it monthly. We have ongoing curriculum meetings, and the documents are live on our website, so they can be edited continuously. And the beauty of the documents is they are no longer textbook dependent, so if we were to change resources, it would not change our curriculum or the priority standards. It would just be a different tool to accomplish the same means, so they're infinitely transferable, and that's a fair question.
Thank you for that.
Any other discussion? No? Okay, thank you. All right, motion's out. All in favor? Thank you. So moved. Next item is the approval of the Norwalk Early Childhood Center, NECC, Improvement Project Closeout. It's already done. I know Mr. Hamilton's already sent a letter out. Do you want to speak a little further?
Sure. I did provide you with a letter, should be in your package. Also a letter from Alan Lowe, who was the person at the city who undertook that project on our behalf. The project, as you know, has been open now for over a year. This is really a formal final closeout and acceptance of the project as complete, so we can file the final reimbursement requests with the state of Connecticut. The backup package does include the certificate of occupancy from the building official, the city building official, as well as, again, the letter from Alan Lowe. So the action that we want you to take is to accept the Norwalk Early Childhood Center Improvement Project number 103-0243 AV/CV as complete per the state-approved construction plans.
Great. Thank you. Long time coming. I'm glad it's finally, we've moved on.
Right.
Good. All right. Mr. Meek.
Tom, I'm sorry, this package huge. How did we finish with the budget on that? I thought we came in under?
Yes, was some extra money left in that project. Incidentally, just for your information, Mr. Lowe is proceeding with window replacement. That was not part of the original project at NECC, but it's felt that the windows should be replaced, and so Mr. Lowe is going forward to address that issue with the remaining balance in that project.
And does the, thank you, and does the need for a playground that has equipment that fits 3- and 4-year-olds, where is that in the balance?
That was not part of the original project, but that was funded separately in the capital budget. So the funding, $150,000 of funding is available for that project, and it is now in the really the court of our special education department to put bid specifications. We have had some discussions with our new director of specialized, or chief of specialized learning, and so we would expect we would get those bid specs together hopefully in time for construction over the summer. But we need, obviously, we require somebody in special education to be intimately involved in specking out exactly what we want. We don't want, you know, Bill Hodel or facilities department or something to kind of put together specs in a vacuum. It needs to be tailored to the needs of the 3- and 4-year-olds there, and meet the needs of the students who are in the school there. So, so we have to have really the special education department take the lead on putting those bid specs together.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom.
Great. That's well needed. We're definitely going to need to get that. I mean, for our 3- and 4-year-olds at the school.
Yeah, the playground at Roosevelt right now is designed for elementary school kids. And it's just a little too big for
need a little smaller.
The little guys.
Yeah, and for safety reasons, we need to do that. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Mr. Anderson, second. Mr. Kasimis, all in favor? Thank you. So moved. Next item on our agenda is information reports. Tom, you can come right back up. Sorry. We have the, that's all right, September 2017 monthly financial report.
Okay, you do have the September report. It's still early in the year, so it's hard to really glean too much information from here. We are 25% of the way through the fiscal year, but only 10% of the way through the school year at the end of September. Everything, you know, at this point looks to be pretty much where we would expect it. The largest area of expense for us, of course, is in wages, and overall wages are tracking pretty much right where we would expect them to be tracking. We've expended about just under 12% of our budget as the end of September. And so in terms of wages, you know, we're comfortable with how those expenses are trending at this point. We will need to make a transfer into one of the certified overtime accounts, which does show that we do need to put some money in there, and that was related to summer curriculum work, but it's in the scheme of our budget, it's you know, it's only a few $1,000s. In terms of special education, the very good news to report is we are completely up to date in terms of encumbering all of our out-of-district tuition contracts, as well as all of our other contracts for professional service providers. And those are the two major sources of expenditure for the special education budget. So those funds are all encumbered, and at this point we appear to be on budget, tracking where we would expect to for this fiscal year. So at this, obviously it's still a long ways to go, and things can change, but at this point we are not projecting any shortfalls in the special education area. In some of the facilities accounts, particularly boiler repairs and a few of the other items, We are showing we've expended in some cases, sort of an advanced amount of the budget, but these were planned projects, projects that occurred during the summer when school is not in session. So again, even though some of the accounts are showing, more than being more than 25% expended, we believe the facility accounts are in good shape. Also would indicate that we did learn since the budget was put together, we have a new contract for electricity. We're on a short-term contract right now that resulted in some fairly significant savings for the district, and I believe actually later this week, the city, we procure electricity jointly with the city, and the city will be opening bids, I believe, later this week, and we expect to lock in some savings on electricity for the district, so that's some good news. And I think at this point that is about all that that I can say on the district budget. Again, there's nothing out of the ordinary for us. The big unknown, as you're all still well aware, is the state budget situation, and for us, the implications that could have or may have for the district's grant-funded budgets, particularly the Priority School District grant is one that we are particularly concerned about because last year we received $3.9 million under the Priority School District grant. As we've discussed previously, we are currently spending that grant as if we were going to receive it, and we have reason to believe that we will, in fact, receive it. We know that there was funding for that grant in the governor's original budgets. There was funding for that grant in the Democratic caucus's budgets. There was funding for that grant in the Republican caucus's budget. There was even there even is funding for that grant in the budget that was released yesterday. I think it was the governor's fourth budget that was released yesterday, and there's funding in that budget proposal, $38 million, which is 90% of the amount we received last year, or 90% of the amount that was appropriated statewide last year. The state has not released, none of these budget proposals release any school district by school district allocation. All we know is what the total amount of funding that's been proposed. So, numerous iterations of budget proposals that have been out there have all contemplated continuing the Priority School District grant. However, under the law that is still in place, that program sunset on June 30th, and it's not in the executive order budget that we're operating under currently. So there has to be some action by the legislature and, approved by the governor or overridden by the legislature to reestablish that grant program and to fund that grant program. And so, again, we're knocking on wood. We're keeping our fingers crossed. We think there's good reason to believe that the grant program will continue, but as of right now, under the executive order budget that the state is operating under, it's not there. So I do want to make sure everyone's aware of that fact, and hopefully we'll have a resolution on this sometime soon.
And Tom has stated earlier in earlier presentations that the district's taken a 20% defensive position budgeting for PSD in this 17-18 school year. We're hopeful that we get that or more.
That's correct. If we're funded at 90% of last year's level, we can live with that number. And as Dr. Costanzo said, we had actually, in planning purposes, assumed an even larger cut. Not that I want to suggest that to anyone, but if the grant goes away completely, then it's a big problem for us. So.
Hopefully we won't have to cross that bridge.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Okay, any other further discussion at all? Okay. Next item on our agenda, and under information reports, is committee representative reports. I'll start on this side. Eric, Shirley, Artie?
Curriculum, we had a curriculum meeting tonight. We talked about the new music curriculum, K through 12. And these guys, once again, did a wonderful job putting it all together. They put all the music teachers got together, put their heads together, came up with a great map and a great plan. First time in 38 years. It's been, for one portion of it, that it's been touched. So we're looking forward to it. The curriculum committee did approve it for the full board action for the next time.
Okay, great.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, it's awesome. It's well needed, right? I mean, we've been needing this for quite some time.
38 years.
Close to a new school being built, right?
So again, curriculum committee's doing great work.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, I'd at least like to say for the record that the since our last meeting where we did the committee reports, we have not met for the plan of Conservation and Development Committee. So I know that is still moving forward, and Mayor Rilling and his team are working very well with them to continue moving that forward. So we'll have some more robust discussion at our next meeting. And also, there was a meeting this evening that not this evening, next week, that I'll unfortunately be able to attend. But I look forward to hearing from Ralph and his team on the future of our technology as we move into developing that. I'm grateful to be appointed to that. So hopefully I'll have some information to share once I speak with the team after they meet.
Okay, thank you. Come to me. Policy, we had our last policy meeting. We discussed School Governance Council and the makeup of our School Governance Council. Further discussion needs to happen on that. We are reviewing that, looking at that. We also, again, spoke about sexual harassment. We had Sharice come in and present. We're also thinking about adding some language, transgender language, which we discussed as well. So we're moving forward on that. And that's it for policy. Anyone over here? Dr. Krevakor?
Yep. The October meeting for the Norwalk Facilities Construction Commission was canceled. As far as the Ad Hoc Special Education Committee, we had two major presentations from two departments. From the Special Ed Department, we had Chief Gorovich and Director Halligan-Thaler share with us extended school year and the status of the Special Ed program, which then transitioned into the Finance Department, where Chief Hamilton and Director Carr-Schmidt shared with us what Mr. Chief Hamilton just expressed in terms of the Special Ed budget, that we are in good shape thus far with the budget, and in terms of the programs and services, that we're making some strides and we're moving in the right direction, but we still have these little bits of bumps and hurdles that we're still addressing as we try to improve the programs and the services.
Thank you. I will stay on this side. Dr. Krevakor, any board announcements?
No.
Okay. Sherelle?
I attended the Cavalcade,
yeah.
and it was really nice. It was very exciting. They do a really phenomenal job over at Norwalk High, so that was nice. Shirley was also there, Dr. Costanza. So it was, I think, half of the board. Not the board, but half of the central office was there, nice. I believe. But it was really nice. I also want to state that the Norwalk Public Library Board is very excited about its budding partnership with the Norwalk Public School System. We have, I guess, 844 kindergarten students will be getting library cards, and that's starting this Monday. So we're really excited about that. And then partnering with the tutoring program for Tier 3 intervention. So we've been really excited about
And the library card, is that coming directly to the school, to each school with, how is that working?
The applications are going to each of the kindergarten students along with the book Lola at the library. And so the parents have the opportunity to either return the applications to either library or they can return them to the schools and we'll pick them up.
Right.
So, yay.
Thank you. Mr. Kasimis?
I'll just briefly share that we did have our first weekend of the Haunting at Mill Hill for the Norwalk Historical Society, which is a large fundraiser which directly goes to support the third grade program at the Little Red Schoolhouse, which I got to attend when I was a child. And Mr. Meek was there very briefly with his little ones when they realized that this was far too scary this year. And I did see a number of our teachers and administrators in my group tours, whether or not they recognized the face behind the latex and gore. That's a whole nother story, but it was very well attended, and I just wanted to thank anybody from the community, especially those that are our teachers and administrators that did come.
Thank you. Shirley?
Yes, I attended a couple of weeks ago Marvin School. They had the ribbon cutting ceremony for their new playground. The mayor was there with me, and it was very exciting. And as Sherelle said earlier, I attended the Cavalcade band on Saturday, and that's something that, as everyone already knows, I'm a very strong supporter of music, and I go to every single one of these events. I went to Brian McMahon a couple weeks ago, and this one here, and I stress very strongly, and I'm very glad that in our curriculum committee that we are dealing with music and art, because arts and music is extremely important for our children. And the fact that we do have a curriculum now that's going to be put in place, and for us to try to embrace this and try to move forward with this, with trying to increase this type of services for our kids. Because as watching, as Sherelle said earlier, and we was there with Frank, and Brenda was there, and Maura, so it was good to see all of that support there. And just to see how our children are really thriving in this area, and in curriculum we talked about how it goes with developing them with academics and all that, because you have to know a lot about math and things like that in order to succeed, and for them to be in sync the way they are, it's something that's amazing. And I just hope that going into the future that we will continue to support this type of services and give it all that we can, and to keep these kids involved in this music, and from elementary all the way up. Really, we need to stay on top of this. So,
thank you, Shirley. Absolutely agree. Mayor.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Shirley was saying. I attended the Cavalcade of Bands, and there was a school there that was every bit as big as Norwalk High School or Brian McMahon. I won't mention the school, but their band was about a third of the size. And I have to wonder whether they had a middle school music program that we have, because that's a feeder into our high schools, and that's why Brian McMahon and Norwalk High School are known throughout the country for their music program. And I think it's because of the middle school programs that we have. So I think it's critically important. And I congratulate the curriculum committee and the board for having continued that program in the middle schools. It's really important. The other thing, I did attend the Brian McMahon High School homecoming game the other day. They just lost by a few points at the end. They fought a hard game, and they are to be congratulated for the way that they played. And one other thing, in Silvermine and Rowayton School, I attended their walkathons last Friday afternoon. It's absolutely amazing that each school, and I won't say which school won, but you probably all know, raised over $30,000 for doing things within the school. One of the schools, some of the funding is going to the hurricane victims in Puerto Rico.
Right.
Other school projects that perhaps can't be funded in the city budget or the school budget, they're using that money to enhance the school experience. And that's a credit to the city of Norwalk and the way that people stand up, do what they have to do, or do what they want to do to make us a better place. So it was really quite remarkable to watch these young students raising that kind of money.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, really. Mr. Anderson.
I am so sorry, I forgot one announcement. It was last Thursday, the 5th, I was able to attend an event at Stepping Stones Museum, which was to honor the Boardwatch volunteers, and I was fortunate enough to be there. Tony Williams and the ConCan team put on an amazing performance. Well, it was kind of a performance. But really, it was a wonderful event to show what our Boardwatch volunteers have done for us, what they're continuing to do, and watching where ConCan and their team are going here in Norwalk, specifically in helping us develop, a better understanding of our positions here. And, the mayor was there with us, and Dr. Costanza was there with us. Both of our Boardwatch volunteers here tonight with us were there. It was a wonderful turnout, and it was a celebration to really honor those that put into a lot of work to making this program come into fruition, and it's just the beginning. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Well said. All right. Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. So I'm going to start with the September 19 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Anderson, second. Dr. Cravicore. I'm going to add for discussion I'm noticing it says September 15th, but it should be September 19th on the sheet. It shows September 15th, but it should show September 19th. For that date, September 19th, page 8 of 9, under Policy Committee, it states, Ms. Keyes reported that the last meeting was a review of the highlights of the year on policy work, the DABE, it should be CABE, C-A-B-E audit. And that was my correction. Shirley, did you have a correction?
Yeah, the September 19th one, right?
Yes.
Okay, on
Yeah.
page 6 of 9, the middle where it says Mr. Kasimis moved to table the item to the next meeting. He did not move to table the item to the next meeting. He moved to table the item into the state budget.
Was approved.
Was approved.
Okay. Okay.
I have the same thing.
Mr. Kasimis.
I have the same thing, but I also have page 4. I did not second the motion.
Okay.
Page 4.
Okay. I don't recall who did, but, okay. Thank you.
And on page 7, instead of director, it should indicate for Yvette Gorovich, Chief of Specialized Learning and Student Services.
Okay. Thank you. Can add that in. Okay. All right.
I have a correction.
Yes.
That was the first meeting since I've been the mayor that I had to cast a vote. Yet
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not listed in the section on attendance. So I was
We
here.
remember that.
I was here, so I did cast a vote, and I'm not listed on that section.
Okay. Thank you. Any other changes or additions on that? Okay.
19th.
Motion's in. All in favor of approving the minutes for September 19th?
Corrections, yeah.
Corrections, yes.
Right, okay.
Abstentions? Okay. So moved. Thank you. Next, we'll look at the approval of minutes for October 3rd. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Anderson, second. Ms. Harris? Any discussion or questions, Mr. Anderson?
2 corrections.
Okay.
I don't know if Mr. Kasimis noticed our tried and true.
Okay.
But I'm going to get to that one second. The first one that I noticed is on page 4, or page 3. Mr. Barbas left the meeting at a certain time, but then below that it shows him voting. So where that needs to be moved is that when Mr. Barbas left the meeting at 7:37 needs to be moved to page 5 above the workshop session, because that was when he did need to depart to attend another event. And then also, of course, Mr. Kasimis and I's tried and true battle back and forth, although it won't be much longer, you know, so maybe I will be motioning to close the meeting, but Mr. Kasimis did move to close the meeting, and I seconded the motion, so.
Okay. Thank you. Another correction?
Yeah, page 4, I moved to table the motion again,
Okay.
and Dr. Kreviger seconded.
Okay. Any other discussion or changes?
I guess I'm the attendance supervisor.
Yeah.
The mayor is.
I was mentioned as being here, but Mr. Meek was mentioned as not being here,
Okay.
and he did make several motions, so
Yeah.
Mr. Meek was in attendance.
Okay.
Oh, that is true, look at that.
Good. Glad we're looking at these minutes. Good, it's important. Any other? Okay. All in favor of changes?
With correction.
With corrections. All right, so moved. All right, I'm looking both sides. Do I have a motion? Oh, yes.
Statement just before we
Yes,
close.
absolutely.
I think Dr. Connor's last day
Yes,
is,
November 2nd, I believe.
I think it's
November 3rd.
this week.
Okay.
So I don't think he's going to attend another, so can we just say goodbye? I don't know, Dr.
Absolutely.
Connor, where you are, but
watching,
very
yes.
well done, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done and the strides that you've made with the Norwalk Public Library System and putting systems in, I'm sorry, Norwalk Public School System. Library,
Swipe that from the record.
Norwalk Public School System and putting systems in place, so we really appreciate it.
And I'll echo that. Thank you, Dr. Connor, you're watching tonight, but we appreciate all the work that you've done for Norwalk Public Schools and our students.
Good luck.
Now you made it.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Oh, to approve.
Thank you. I mean, sorry.
No,
Do I have a
right
motion to adjourn?
Over here, over
Right
here.
here, right here.
Somebody
To
approve.
adjourn,
Yes.
I make the motion to adjourn.
All right. All in favor?
Wait, we don't have a second.
Oh, we did. Dr. Kreviker approved it first, and then we had,
No. I make a motion to adjourn. He makes the
that.
motion a second.
all right.
And I will give my second to Dr. Kreviker.
All in favor? All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Good
We
night.
have to have a little levity on those things.
I was looking your way. See?
Yeah.
I was looking
No,
this way.
Marilyn was
Not
here.
looking that
The
way.
mayor would have been close the meeting.
Oh, did it, Craig?
good in that seat.
Oh, thank you.
Heidi,
Nice.
do you need this?
I know people there.
I'm going to give everything to Frank.
Okay.
Yeah, Frank, I'm going to give you this. This is all signed. Okay. So we're good. Policy, we're good.
Policy.
All right, we're moving along.
See how it all goes.
Our next meeting is November 17th. This is just to be.
I sent an email out to everybody. We had election days. Yeah, so we were looking at the 14th. I haven't heard back, so. You're right.